This is lesson 10 of beginning fencing, and today what we'll do is we'll teach you a couple of the more advanced footwork moves, ballestra and the fleche. And I always tell my kids the fleche is the most dangerous move in fencing, and we'll explain why that's the case a little later on. And then there's a secondary video that also shows some fleshing, done with épées rather than foils. And then a video that will sort of reinforce what we've talked about with disengagements. So, we're going to start with the ballestra. In the beginning, when we were talking about the way that knights were pulled off their horses and then were killed by people in battle, we discussed that the people would gather around them and then yank the knight off the horse. Knights had to come up with a way to fight against this. And strangely enough, what they did is they came up with a move that they taught their horses. And I've heard this called a ballestra, which is what we call it in fencing. I've also heard some equestrian people call it a capriole. And what they did is they taught their horses to jump up into the air and kick out all four legs, and then be able to bring all four legs back down and hit the ground at the same time. Well, these were 3/4 ton horses. So anybody standing in front and behind that horse is going to go flying. And the idea is that everybody else steps back after they've seen that happen. Now nobody's holding the horse. The horse hits the ground with all four legs and can take off and get some momentum and probably plow through the enemy lines and get the knight to safety. So all we have to do is teach you how to jump up, kick out all four of your legs, and then have them come and hit the ground at the same time. The reality of this move is that it's a move that replaces or substitutes for an advance. So if I do an advance, I go about this far. Right? Advance, and we're there. If I do a ballestra, I'm going to kick my front foot out, and as my front foot comes back, I'm going to move my back foot up. So I'm here, and I go, and you see I cover just about the same distance. So this is not me attempting to do a long jump, because I'll be in the air too long. Or I'm not attempting to do a high jump. Same thing. Once I go up, the opponent goes, oh, you can't change direction until you come down. Great time to attack. So I'm here. I'm going to kick the front foot out and move the back foot up as I do that. Why do some people do the lessons? Well, the theory is, and I've never actually timed this out, is that how many forward motions am I doing with an advance? 1, 2. How many forward motions am I doing with a ballestra? 1. So, some people say that a ballestra is faster than an advance. You can actually also substitute for the ballestra. Ballestra is a little old-fashioned. It's what I learned when I started fencing, and so I do ballestras. Some people do what they call a hop or a jump. It accomplishes the same thing. They just hop forward. It goes about the same distance as an advance, done in one motion, does the same thing. I learned the old-fashioned ballestra, that's pretty much what I stay with. So, we've done an advance, or we've done a ballestra, or a hop. What's a move that generally follows it, or possibly follows an advance? And it's a line. And so, you use a ballestra or a hop to set up a line. And that's why it's important that the 2 feet hit the ground at the same time. If you do your ballestra imperfectly, it slows down your lunge, and you're probably going to be off balance when you try to do it. So, you want to be able to ballestra, lunge, and go that way. Sometimes you will see fencers try to make as much noise as they can on the ballestra, try to frighten their opponents. Might work against a beginner, probably doesn't do anything to an advanced fencer. But sometimes you'll see little kids go and try to make as much noise as they can on the ballestra. If you're banging your feet into the floor, your energy is going this way and not that way. And you really want to be directing it as part of an attack to your opponent. So here, as you go. The other move that we're going to show is a fleche. And to do a fleche, it's almost like a really huge crossover step. A fleche is a finishing move that you can use in place of a lunge. So I'm about lunge distance from my opponent. I'm going to reach out with my arm to get the right of way. And about halfway through that, I'm going to kick my back leg around really hard. So I'm here, and I kick it around, and I hit, and then I continue off the side of the system, the side of my opponent. The fleche is a footwork move. So, just like when we were talking about hitting with advances, hitting with lunges, you want to hit your opponent at the time that the lead foot hits the ground, which in this case is the back foot. So I go here, I extend, and I should now, right there, have hit my opponent. What I will tend to do is, once I've done this, I will continue to run very fast so that just in case I missed, the opponent doesn't have any time to hit me with any sort of move. So I have, turned this into a hit and don't get hit type move, if I've done it correctly. Lots of variations on how people do fleches. I tend to do more of what you would call a back foot fleche, where I use the power from the back leg to push off. Some people do a front foot fleche. So they're here, and they really push off with the front foot as they're going forward. Harder to do, probably actually the best, is if you can do a fleche that uses both legs. So as you start pushing with this, and you're still kicking that back leg around, and you get the power out of both legs. But the timing is really hard. Now, one of the things about a fleche is when you cross over your feet, make sure you don't go too far. So I go here. If I do this, I'm going to run off the strip before I get to my opponent. So I've got to remember that I'm trying to go forward with my fleche. I'm here, and I want to go that way, and then go back. Some people do what I call the wrong side fleche. So if I'm right-handed and I'm kicking this left foot around for some power, it's going to naturally throw me off to the right-hand side. If you're left-handed, you're going to kick your right foot around, and you'll go off to the left-hand side. To be able to do this, they have to throw a short fleche. And a lot of times they're using it as a move that we haven't studied yet, which is called a second intention. So they're not always intending to hit with their first move. They're doing a move to see what their opponent's reaction is, and then they're going to try to finish that fleche and hit with a reaction to their opponent's reaction. And we'll talk more about that later. Now, the word fleche, it's French, F-L-E-C-H-E, and I believe there's a stress mark over the E. What's the word fleche mean? If you're familiar with names, it relates to the English name Fletcher. Or, if you're not so familiar with that, if you've ever done archery, fletches in English are the little feathers on the back of an arrow. And fleche is actually the French word for arrow. So this is one of the very few fencing moves where the name is actually descriptive of the move. The idea is you are supposed to be making yourself look like an arrow as you make. Get your arm nice and straight and go left. And the English name Fletcher means arrow. So they all relate in that fashion. Why do I say this is the most dangerous move in fencing? In the 1982 World Championships, two guys who were fencing for it decided to fleche each other at the same time. And one of them had the sword break, and it went through the mask of his opponent. And unfortunately through the guy's eye. And he was in a coma for about 9 days, I think, and finally died. At that point, they shut down fencing for a while and basically said, nobody should be fencing until we know what's up. And they made the masks much, much safer. And they did some things with the swords to make them safer as well. One of the things they did with the swords is with the metallurgy and everything, that now if a sword breaks, it should break pretty flat with no jagged edges or anything that's going to cut through a jacket or through a mask or anything. If you run into one that breaks very jaggedly, it probably was not a well-made sword. If it's got a flat, break, it just won't have a way to cut through it. The other thing they did is they made the masks much stronger. So, if you look at the little logo on this mask, you see the very bottom line, it says 350 N. What's an N? N is a newton, which is a unit of force. It's worth about a quarter pound of force. So 350 newtons is right about 87.5 pounds of force. What that means is that this mask manufacturer guarantees that when this mask comes out of their factory, it will withstand 87.5 pounds of force on this mesh. If you think about it, here is a foil, and you can see how much and how quickly this bends. So you can be pretty sure that you're not going to get 87.5 pounds of pressure off the front tip of this foil, because it's going to bend and relieve the pressure. It may say on a mask, it may say level 1 mask. So that's a mask, again, that's 350 newtons. You can use a 350 Newton mast all the way up to and including the U.S. National Championships. If you're fencing internationally, you need a level 2 mast. And you can determine that because it says FIE, Federación Internacional de Esgrima, International Fencing Federation. And here it should say, I'll be able to see it.
This one, you can see it.
Yeah, here it says CE 1600. Okay. So, 1600 newtons is 400 pounds of force. Because they're figuring that Olympic and World Championship competitors are stronger, faster, everything like that, that they need more protection and their mass will survive, are guaranteed when it comes out of the factory to survive a 400-pound hit. To make certain that that mass stays safe, when you go to a lot of competitions, certainly a big regional or national competition, they're going to have someone there called an armorer. And that armorer is going to take a look at the mask, and they have what we call a mask punch. And they're going to push on the mask with that punch, and if the punch goes through the mask, they mark that mask so that the referees and everything will know that this mask did not pass and is unsafe. The really hardcore armorers will tend to confiscate the mask themselves, and some of them will even confiscate it and crush it, just to make sure you don't try to use that mask at the competition. So Will come out and hit me with a few fleches. So, as I said, a fleche replaces a lunge basically. So Will should be right about the same distance, maybe just a little farther than what he is for a lunge with me. And he's going to go ahead and fleche his head. And because of constraints of where we are and everything, he's not accelerating incredibly fast. So all the way fleche with him. So I'm here. If I get his head, I should be speeding up as I get past him, just to make sure that there's no way he's going to hit me if I miss. Hopefully I don't miss. Now, a fleche is just a piece of footwork. So, we haven't learned all of the other moves, but what he's doing now is just a regular attack fleche. He could do a fake disengage fleche. And hit. There are some other moves that we're going to show you later where you take the blade. Okay? He could do a beat fleche. He knocked my sword out of the way, and then fleche by. Again, it's just a piece of footwork. You could combine it with other footwork, right? You just have him doing a fleche, and then you could do an advanced fleche. He had an advance and then he fleche. He could do a retreat fleche. Maybe I attack, and some people do this, and it's a great move because people aren't expecting it. I'll attack, he'll parry, and then he'll repulse with a fleche instead of a lunge or a move. So you can use the fleche in a lot of different ways. So now we've shown you how to do a fleche, how to use a fleche. What do we have to show you? How to defend against the fleche. I say there are generally 3 ways to defend against the fleche. And again, because of the nature of this class, I'm teaching fleches out of the order that I normally would teach them. So I'll have to explain a couple of the other moves that we're going to use. But first way to defend against the fleche. So Will's going to fleche. Let me do it real soon. Will fleches, and I just retreat. I retreat far enough that he can't hit me, and I didn't go real fast or real far. I could really have bailed out. And if he's planning to hit me on that first step, which is what he's supposed to do, the fleche doesn't work, and he probably doesn't just keep running. Another one, and I'll just show you one of these, is a move that we're going to show later. They're called evasion. So, Will's going to come at me. I just shifted my body, stuck my arm out, and let him run right onto my arm. And it's because he's trying to go this way to run off the right-hand side. If I shift like this, my target's not where he's expecting it, and he runs into my sword. And the third way is I can do it very remote. Pass. Now, you'll see this time, I hit him in the back. I parry him when he's here in front of me, and by doing a parry, I get the right to reverse. I did one remote. Parry, I turn, I hit him in the back. And that's pretty much the old-fashioned way to do a parry remote against the fleche. There is a more modern way, and it looks more like this. So, this time I parry him, and instead of following him, I take my sword like this, and then around, and try to hit him in front. That time I don't think I pulled it off quite so well. But, what I can do is I parry it here, and come around and try to hit it. Some people will parry and try to come around this way. I've never been able to make that one work, but I've scored a few points that way. And that's the way